Welcome to Military Spouse World 1-to-1, a weekday podcast featuring a military family shaker and mover, helping you navigate this amazing chapter in life. Here's your host, Dave Etter.
In this episode of Spouse World 1-to-1, we meet Lizann Lightfoot. You know her as the seasoned spouse. She's an accomplished military spouse blogger, and she's going to pass on some of the tips of the trade. Hello, Lizann. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great.
You are an amazing spouse in the military world.
Thank you very much.
You're one of the super bloggers, in my opinion. You do so much, and you pass along information that is so important to all of us. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into blogging.
Sure. I blog as the seasoned spouse, which, as you know, is a term that the military community uses for any of those salty spouses that have been around for a couple years and maybe done a few PCS moves and handled a few deployments. I've kind of embraced that title, not as the most knowledgeable spouse in the military, but just someone who wants to be helpful and has kind of been there, done that, and is very willing to hold someone else's hand and walk them through it. I'm a Marine Corps spouse, married my husband almost 10 years ago. We had dated about 7 years as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought it was bad. I had to talk my wife into 2 years of, will you marry me? Will you marry me? Before she finally said I do. And we've been together 18 now.
Oh, well, congratulations. The willingness was there. There was just a lot of deployments and some lousy duty stations that really got in the way of our plans.
Oh, so he was already in the military when you were dating.
We met before the military. We met right out of high school and started dating when I was going to college. After a year of dating, he started thinking about his future and decided that the military was the way to go. I was partially on board with that decision. But I didn't have, a full say because we weren't quite engaged and we weren't married at the time, so it was his choice and I supported it. And he went through 3 deployments while we were dating. During that time, we were always stationed in different time zones and, long distance the whole way.
Right.
And finally, when I told him basically, you have to get orders back to the East Coast and then I will marry you. And he did. And I've kind of been along for the ride ever since.
Ever since then, you've been like, okay, so you can get it done.
Although even at the time when we were married, he was finishing out his first 8 years of his contract. And the original plan was that we would leave the military behind. And I was going to be the breadwinner for a while he went back to school. And we had this whole plan. Then the recession of 2008 kind of messed up the plans. And we decided to stay with the military. And I stayed home to be with our kids, and it's been very different from what we imagined, but we did it. Here we are, and we've done what we could.
So you got with your husband, and you've made a few PCSs. You are now blogging. How did you get started blogging?
That happened first by accident and then intentionally.
By accident?
I did. I started blogging when we had orders overseas. We were stationed in Spain, in Rota, Spain, for 3 years. At the time, I just started a blog for friends and family. They wanted to see pictures of our travels and hear about our adventures. So I was doing that. After a year at that duty station, we had done quite a bit of day trips and local sightseeing and trying to learn about the culture. I started having friends ask me, well, how would I go to this city? Or what can you tell me about this holiday? I was introduced as, oh, this is Lizann. She's just been everywhere locally and she knows all about Spain. I said to my friend who was introducing me, wait, you've been stationed here longer than we have. And she said, right, but you guys have just traveled everywhere and you've written about it. I look at your blog every time I'm going to plan a trip. I didn't realize at the time that people were actually using my travel blog as a resource and a how-to for adjusting to that duty station. So that really made me think about blogging differently as, not just a way of recording my family's adventures, but actually helping the military community and making things a little bit easier for other people that were following in our footsteps. So I started making the blog a lot more resourceful, including, prices and websites and times that places were open and GPS coordinates for parking lots, because it's, as you know if you've spent any time in Europe, it's very hard to find your way around. I'd started turning the travel blog into a more resource blog for that duty station, and eventually I realized I'd collected enough material to write a book, and so I published the book called Welcome to Rhoda, and it's my first book. It's been published for a few years now and has sold fairly well, considering that it's just for that one duty station. And I've gotten amazing feedback from families about how helpful it is to talk about all the different resources that are on base and how to prepare for an overseas PCS and how to go shopping in town and which stores to visit and the Spanish calendar of holidays, all those types of things that you just don't know automatically when you move overseas. That was my first step in blogging. Yeah, it's only for military spouses moving to Naval Station Rhoda. So that's a very small market. So when I say selling well, I've sold a few hundred copies.
It's consistent.
But it is consistent, and it really opened my eyes to the ability of working from home and having a career in writing and also helping military spouses in the military community at the same time.
Where are you at now?
We are now stationed in California at Camp Pendleton.
Mm-hmm. And so you're going to write one for Camp Pendleton?
Probably not a book. This is a very large base, a very busy area, everything from LA down to San Diego. There's several military bases in this area. It's a lot more like being a small fish in a big pond here. But I did start my blog after we had moved here. So the Seasoned Spouse blog is marketed to military spouses in general, regardless of branch and regardless of age or anything like that. My purpose is just to encourage and motivate military spouses through deployments, through PCSs, through all the challenges of military life.
Right. Good deal. So how does somebody find that on the internet?
My website is www.seasonedspouse.com.
Just like it sounds.
Yep.
Wow. Well, that makes it easy.
So you can find me by lots of different search terms. You know, if you look up military spouse, if you look up a lot of things related to military life, you'll probably stumble on my blog as well.
I think if we use the hashtag milspouse, you come up quite easily on Twitter.
Yep. I'm on Twitter.
Yeah, I know you've probably been annoyed with all of my male military spouse radio show and spouse spouts and then Spouse World 1-to-1 because those are starting to pop up a lot on milspouse under the hashtag.
Oh, I enjoy it. It's been really wonderful connecting with the military spouse community. It's so much larger than I had really imagined. When I started blogging, I thought, I don't know if I want to go into just the military spouse niche. You know, that's so small compared to mommy blogs or, you know, financial blogs or some of the larger blogging communities. And I didn't know if there was really any business or income to be made in the military spouse blogging community. But all of the connections I've made and all of the people that I've met have just been wonderfully supportive. And I've realized that it's not so much a competitive community. Every time one person succeeds, they're lifting up the whole community with them. It's been amazing to make those connections and realize that. And
on top of that, if everybody was to do a blog or if everybody was to do a podcast, we would all have an easy way of being in touch with one another and being able to be able to connect. It'd be kind of like, you know, a gigantic Facebook of a very specialized Facebook with real content instead of garbage you see on Facebook now. I mean,
exactly. I think every military spouse has their own experience and their own story, and the more that we learn about each other and connect with each other, the broader view that you have, the more able you are to really tap into the needs of the military spouse community and find out what the problems are and how to solve some of them.
As far as blogging is concerned, do you have very many military spouses asking you what's the formula to make this work? Surely there's some tricks and tips to getting a blog published and where to publish and what pitfalls to try and avoid.
Certainly, and I'm not exactly an expert on the technical side of blogging because almost everything I know I've learned in the past year. Just over a year ago, I had no idea how to go about doing a professional blog and actually make money off of blogging. It was a very huge learning curve. I felt like I was learning something new every day, every week. What I I ended up doing was some things I did correctly by accident, and then some things I would do differently if I went back and did it again. I ended up using the blog to launch a freelance writing business because what I really loved was the writing.
Right.
And different people like different aspects of blogging. Some people do such wonderful graphics and wonderful imagery, are experts at the social media sharing. And I've stumbled my way through those. I can handle them, but that's not my strength. My real strength is the writing, finding that voice, being able to be a voice for the military spouse community. I use the blog to connect with other military spouse companies and websites. I've now turned that into a part-time job where I write for several different pages and several different companies, and it's enough to be a part-time income.
Did you find it difficult to find a place for your blogs and for your freelance writing to be seen? Because I know it's one thing to write. Susan Reynolds, who co-hosts Spouse Spouts with me, it's actually her show and I'm her co-host, but she used to write for the Fayetteville Observer. It was very successful. She was getting a good little stipend off of doing that newspaper. Do you find it better to be in newspapers or to be online through digital media?
I do prefer the online presence just because it's more universal. Military spouses are spread out all over the world, so it's a way to kind of instantly connect with communities in different countries and all over. I like having my book. I like having that printed material, something you can hold in your hands. And I have explored a few places to be in print, like Military Spouse magazine, but for the most part, my work is digital, and that makes it easier to be shared and easier for people to find it on a search.
Right.
I think the best way to find a place for your work and to start promoting your work is by just carving out a little corner in your niche, networking with other people in the community. And the way that I stumbled into that was by doing book reviews of other military spouse books.
Oh, nice.
I had written a book, and I considering writing a second one. So I wanted to do some market research and see what else is out there. And I started realizing that there's over 100 books written by military spouses, and that's just on the nonfiction side. There's plenty of other military spouses who have become fiction and romance authors. But even just nonfiction books about military life and deployments and memoirs and talking about military kids, all those topics are out there in print form, but they're not very well published. You're not probably going to find them on the shelf at Barnes & Noble. You need to find the right websites and find these authors. So I started tracking down military spouse authors and asking them, hey, can I review your book? I'd love to read it and then share it on my blog. And it was small at first. I didn't have a ton of readership, and I wasn't getting any money from the social media shares, but I was enjoying just meeting the authors and developing that real connection. And after doing that for a few months is when I got my first few job offers for freelance writing, and it's kind of taken off from there. So I would encourage anyone that's in a small niche trying to find a place for their blog, don't just, spam Twitter and try and do everything through social media. Make actual connections with real people in the community, whether it's through a book or through a product or a podcast like this.
Right.
Real people are developing products for the community, and if you want to be part of that, then you need to participate.
And in a sentence, the networking is not a television group of program shows. A network is human beings interacting with one another. So, yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
Well, Lizann, I appreciate you coming onto the show. I really have had fun with this. You've opened my eyes a little bit. I might just go ahead and start writing up something about podcasting so I can have it in print.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure you have a lot of experience and a lot to offer. I think everyone does. We probably all are walking around with a book in our brains, and we just haven't bothered to write it down. So the more people that share their knowledge, then the more that everyone can learn from you.
So to get a hold of you, just go to seasonspouse.com and go from there. You're easy to find otherwise. Lizann Lightfoot, thank you very much for being with us on Spouse 1-to-1.
You're welcome. It's been an honor.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Military Spouse World 1-to-1 is a BDE Productions podcast. The views and opinions of the host or any of the guests are not that of BDE Productions or sponsors. Be sure to like this episode and subscribe to Spouse World 1-to-1.